Hey beautiful, have you considered subscribing to our channel? It helps us make quality content for you. Help us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers.
The Varithian spear hung silent above the Earth's upper atmosphere, cloaked in its obsidian shell, invisible to the eyes of the lesser species below. Inside its command deck, awash in the glow of pulsating glyphs and circulating biosensors, Commander Jacques Thule of the Ternaxi Dominion watched the replay again. He didn't blink. His species had shed the need for eyelids eons ago, but if he had the capacity for biological expressions of disbelief, he'd be wide-eyed and slack-jawed. The footage looped. Again. The human. Designation: Staff Sergeant Marcus Wade, charged through a hailstorm of kinetic projectiles, blood streaking down his chin, his jaw unhinged and flopping like a torn harness. The impact that broke it had come from an electromagnetic baton swung by one of Jacques Thule's own scouts, a calculated blow, a disabling strike, clinical, efficient. Wade should have dropped. He didn't. Instead, he spat a crimson string of saliva, reset his jaw against the barrel of his rifle, and roared. Then he attacked. Jacques Thule paused the clip on the moment the scout, a warrior-caste hybrid with plated thorax and retractable claws, was tackled and pinned by the injured human. The scout's data feed had terminated seconds later, lens cracked, mic flooded with static, then silence. "Tell me again what we're looking at," Jacques Thule murmured, gesturing to his second-in-command, a leaner Ternaxi named Sir. Sir's voice vibrated through its dual vocal cords. "We've analyzed the footage in detail. The subject, Wade, suffered a Class 3 mandibular fracture. No pain inhibitors, no exosuit augmentation. He fought through it." Jacques Thule tilted his head. "Fought through it? No. He thrived. On it." There was something more than physical endurance at work, something feral, something unquantified. The Ternaxi had cataloged thousands of species across 7 star systems. They had dissected warriors, monks, predators. Most biological. Forms collapsed under enough damage. The human should have lost consciousness, should have bled out, should have succumbed. He didn't. Jacques Thule leaned in close to the monitor, pausing on the image of Marcus Wade's face, bloodied but grinning. Grinning like violence was a feast and he'd come hungry. "I want a full neuro-emotional profile on this one," he ordered. "If this is what Earth is breeding, we may need to adjust our threat assessments." Sir hesitated. "We've been observing for years. Most humans display average physiological resilience. Some are weak, undisciplined, reckless. And yet this one," Jacques Thule interjected, "survived an ambush, killed 2 of our finest scouts, and walked 40 meters with a dislocated jaw just to scream insults at our departing shuttle." Sir chittered uneasily. "He said, and I quote, 'You hit like a drunken hamster.'" Jacques Thule was silent for a moment. "Do we know what a hamster is?" "No, Commander." "Find out." He stood, his armored feet clicking on the deck. Plates. Outside the viewport, Earth rotated beneath them like a vulnerable heart waiting to be pierced. He had thought it soft, primitive, divided. But now he wasn't so sure. The ground beneath the Vermont woodland training site was soaked, with last night's rain turning it into a dark, sticky mire. Marcus Wade didn't care. Mud was just nature's way of saying, "You're not done suffering yet." He threw a punch into the worn leather pad Coach Reynolds held, ignoring the bolt of pain that shot from his shoulder into his back. The bruise from the week-old ambush still throbbed. He didn't care about that either. "Faster, Wade!" Reynolds barked. "That jaw working again or still flapping like loose meat?" Marcus smirked through the swelling. His jaw was still technically fractured, but he could chew. Soft food, and more importantly, talk trash. "Still prettier than you, Coach." "Then you're too pretty to fight. Pick it up." He threw another punch, then a second, faster, sharper, harder. Pain flared in his knuckles. He relished it. Pain was proof he was still standing. Reynolds lowered the pad and stared at him. You sure you don't want medical to recheck that jaw? Nope. Marcus spat to the side. Blood. He grinned. Pain makes me mad, and when I'm mad, I get better. Reynolds snorted. That a scientific? Fact, it is now. They'd told him he should have gone to the base hospital, but hospitals were for healing. Marcus didn't heal. He got even. High above, in the Spears observation chamber, Jacques Thule watched the scene play out in real time. The surveillance, drones they had laced across Earth's continents, fed him raw data. Facial temperature, cardiac rhythm, cellular regeneration. What they were seeing was impossible. Wade's white blood cell count had spiked beyond what was biologically necessary. Inflammatory cytokines surged in defiance of pain, not in response to it. His tissue was reacting faster than predicted. Scar formation had begun within minutes of trauma, not days. It was as if the body had chosen to expedite its own repair. Worse, his adrenaline levels weren't spiking from fear. They were steady, controlled, weaponized. He is accelerating. His recovery via emotional agitation, Sir said, studying the monitor. We expected sedatives. Instead, he chose anger. Jacques Thule spoke slowly. He chooses pain, converts it into function. Emotion dictates regeneration. No known species exhibits this pattern. It's as if... Sir paused. Say, it... As if he heals out of spite. The words hung in the air, ridiculous and yet deeply unsettling. Jacques Thule leaned forward. Then we must understand spite, fully, completely, because it may be the most dangerous resource on that planet. 2 days later, the Spear deployed another covert scout, this time with strict orders not to engage, only to observe, collect biological samples. Stay invisible. The scout crept through the forest night with cloaking activated, trinary eyes scanning, breath silent. It watched Wade through a second-story window in his cabin. The man sat at a table, a bottle of whiskey. Untouched in front of him, an old photograph gripped in his calloused hand. The picture was faded, crumpled. 2 boys in military fatigues, arms around each other, grinning like idiots. One of them was Marcus, the other was gone. Killed in action 6 months ago. The scout zoomed in. Wade's jaw still bore signs of fracture, but he wasn't resting. He was stitching a gash on his forearm with fishing line. No anesthetic, no hesitation. The alien's databank pinged an alert. Subject exhibits type 4 defiant behavioral pattern, pain masking via emotional override. Suddenly, Wade looked up, directly at the window. The scout froze. That wasn't possible. He couldn't be seen. But Wade didn't look through the scout. He looked into it. His lips curled into a slow, bitter smile. Then he raised his middle finger. The scout jolted backward. Wade mouthed a single word. Try me! The scout retreated. Mission aborted. Heart rates elevated. A full withdrawal was requested. Jacques Thule reviewed the report in silence. Then he stood, exosuit panels retracting, with a hiss, revealing the living muscle beneath. He walked to the central display and pressed his clawed hand against the hologram of Earth. So beautiful, so wild, so angry, he whispered. Sir approached cautiously. Shall I inform the Dominion Council of our findings? Jacques Thule didn't answer right away. Instead, he replayed the footage one last time. Wade, broken and bloodied, laughing as he charged toward a weaponized enemy 3 times his size. No backup, no fear, just fury, pure and distilled. Not because he wanted to survive, but because he refused to let someone else win. Yes, Jacques Thule said finally. Tell them. Tell them we've found a species that doesn't heal because it must, but because it refuses not to. He stared into the stars. a flicker of something almost like dread curling in his gut. Tell them we've found the apex. Predators. The audio logs were corrupted by static, the visual feed a jagged blur of distorted pixels and collapsing data clusters. But Jacques Thul had watched them enough times to reconstruct every frame in his mind. There was a rhythm to violence, a cadence. And Marcus Wade's life was a brutal symphony, composed in fractured bones and boiling blood. The hologram rotated slowly above the command table, a rendering of Wade's muscular structure, overlaid with trauma markers, old scars, microscopic fractures, scar tissue where there should be clean recovery. His skeleton told a story of collision, his organs of impact, his nerves of refusal. This man is a battlefield that never ends, Sir muttered, eyes flickering across biotelemetry pulled from years of intercepted military reports. By our estimates, he's survived 9 near-lethal injuries, 6 requiring surgical intervention, none of which he permitted until after objectives were completed. Jacques Thul nodded absently. The data was fascinating, yes, but incomplete. Biology alone wasn't the answer. The secret wasn't in Wade's flesh. It was in his mind. Rewind to Operation Night Gale, Jacques Thul ordered. Sir complied. The scene materialized, night vision footage from a desert conflict on Earth's eastern continent. Wade's unit had been ambushed by enemy forces. One of his men, Private Langston, was hit. Shrapnel to the abdomen. The extraction point was 3 kilometers away. Wade carried him, on foot, through gunfire. Midway through, he was struck by a concussive blast that shattered his femur. He did not fall. He staggered, adjusted his weight, kept going. Jacques Thul leaned in. He shouldn't have been able to walk. He didn't, Sir said. He willed himself forward, forced muscle over broken bone. The femur realigned partially from shear, compression as he limped. Pain would have crippled any other species. Pain made him move faster. Jacques Thul turned away from the hologram and toward the larger display now tracking Wade's current activity. The man was deep in the Colorado wilderness, embedded in another training regimen that seemed more punishment than preparation. Alone, cold, moving through snow with only a field blade and a pack slung over one shoulder. Does he ever stop? Jacques Thul asked. No, Commander. He trains through injuries, sleeps in 90-minute cycles. His circadian rhythm is manually suppressed by habit and emotion. Sir hesitated. There is no joy, no peace. His rage is not explosive, it's contained, tempered, like a forge. Jacques Thul watched as Wade paused on a ridgeline, staring into the wind. His breath fogged in front of him, but he didn't flinch, didn't retreat from the cold. He seemed to embrace discomfort, like it was a form of communion. They had known warriors, had dissected soldiers. But never like this. Never someone who didn't fight to survive, but who survived to fight. Marcus lit the cigarette with a spark from his flint striker, then let the wind chew at the flame until it gave up. He didn't really smoke. Not often. But something about lighting a fire in the middle of nowhere made the silence feel like it had meaning. He exhaled slowly. His ribs ached. Old bruises from the ambush a week ago still colored his sides like someone had painted a galaxy on his skin. Purple, blue, a sickly yellow near his sternum. His jaw clicked when he chewed. His left hand had gone numb from nerve compression. He didn't care, not really. Pain was an old friend. It reminded him he was still doing something that mattered, and a voice echoed faintly through his memory. Tommy's voice. You know you're not invincible, right? He could still see the grin on his squad mate's face, could still feel the shove of a shoulder, the camaraderie, the quiet defiance of 2. Guys who knew their number would come up eventually, but never acted like it. Tommy didn't make it out of Kandahar. Marcus did. And that didn't feel right. He took another drag, then dropped the cigarette into the snow, grinding it under his boot. He didn't want to remember, but forgetting felt like betrayal. So he did what he always did. He moved. Every muscle protest was a tribute. Every step forward was a prayer. In the observation chamber, Sir noticed something. He doesn't seek aid. His injuries are not private shame, they are ritual. Jacques Thul had noticed it too. Wade didn't just recover, he carried his pain as a badge, a burden, a declaration. What species turns wounds into symbols? Sir asked aloud. Only one, Jacques Thul replied quietly. And we don't understand them at all. He turned to the wall of cultural data they'd gathered. Media, interviews, digital archives. Earth had thousands of stories, myths, legends. Many of them disturbingly mirrored Wade's existence. Men who fought on while impaled, who laughed with arrows through their lungs, who walked away from explosions, gritting their teeth and flexing. It wasn't fiction. It was aspiration. Their species had taught themselves to survive out of rage, to endure because anything less was weakness. They wrote pain into their stories, passed it down through generations like sacred scripture, and Wade was the living, breathing embodiment of that doctrine. Marcus felt the presence before he saw it. At first, it was subtle, a flicker of light where there shouldn't be one, a whisper of displaced air, a tremor in the snowpack that didn't match the wind's rhythm. He crouched, knife already in hand. He didn't believe in ghosts. But after what happened at the Vermont site, after that encounter where his jaw shattered and something he couldn't see ran from him, he knew something was out there, watching, waiting. "Come on," he muttered. "You've already had one shot. Take another." Nothing moved. Just trees, just frost, just silence. He stood slowly, the tension winding through, his spine like a loaded spring. His breath came steady. Not because he wasn't afraid, but because he was, and fear was fuel. "If you're listening," he said to the trees, to the shadows, "I hope you're taking notes." He turned and walked away. He didn't see the faint shimmer ripple across the air 20 meters behind. Him, like heat waves on asphalt. The scout returned 2 hours later, cloaked in panic and pheromonal distress signals. Sir intercepted it outside the neurodecomp chamber, analyzing its memory capsule before the body could stabilize. There was no physical confrontation, no direct threat, and yet the data told a different story. The human knew. Somehow, Marcus Wade sensed presence, not visually, not audibly, but intuitively. His physiology had spiked, adrenal response activated, micro-muscle fibers contracted for combat. He was ready for war before he knew what he was facing, and he was not afraid. He invited death, Sir whispered, eyes wide. Dared it to come closer. Jacques Thul reviewed the sequence without speaking. The last frame was just a grainy silhouette of Wade, walking away with his back exposed, knife still sheathed, posture relaxed. That, more than anything, terrified them. "He's not just resistant," Jacques Thul said finally. "He's inviting escalation, challenging us, like prey that turns on the predator and asks, 'Is that all you've got?'" Sir couldn't suppress the chill that trembled through his thorax. "What if we're the ones being hunted, Commander?" Jacques Thul didn't answer. He didn't have to. On Earth, Marcus reached the edge of a frozen lake and sat down on the rock nearest the water. He pulled a canteen from his belt, took a sip, and stared into his reflection. The cut on his cheek had closed. He hadn't treated it, just ignored it. It healed anyway. He pressed his fingers to the scar. It throbbed beneath the touch. Not with pain, with memory. Every wound had a story, every scar a lesson. He couldn't forget them, wouldn't even try. Tommy had once joked that Marcus would outlive the war, outlive the Corps, outlive everything, just out of spite. Marcus had laughed at the time. Now he wasn't so sure it wasn't true. He didn't survive for glory, didn't recover to be admired. He did it because the universe had dared him not to. Because gravity pushed down and he pushed back harder. Because somewhere out there, something had hurt him, and he wanted it to try again. The Ternaxi Dominion did not conduct interrogations in the conventional sense. They extracted truth through molecular dissection, neural mapping, and, when necessary, memory echo replication. Pain was irrelevant to them. Emotion, even more so. But with Marcus Wade, those tools were failing. No matter how much data they gathered, his core eluded them. "He doesn't respond to predictable stimuli," Sir said, pacing behind the glass chamber where Wade's neural construct pulsed. "Even our simulations break under his mental architecture. He resists memory. Relays. He denies causality." Jacques Thul stood before the projection, arms clasped behind his back. Wade's mind, visualized in synaptic bursts and cascading thought patterns, resembled a storm. A hurricane of impressions and fractured recollections, stitched together by stubbornness, pride, and something far more primal. "Perhaps you're asking the wrong questions," Jacques Thul said. Sir tilted his head. "He's human. He should break like the others." "He's not like the others." Jacques Thul gestured toward the memory strand currently cycling. A battlefield, not Earth. This was their own simulation, the kind designed to reduce hardened soldiers to begging husks. But Wade wasn't begging. He was smiling, half his chest, simulated open, breathing ragged, weapon jammed. Still, he charged, and then the simulation broke. Again, system overload. "Run it again," Jacques Thul said. Sir hesitated. "He's destabilizing the system, Commander. Then make it stronger." It wasn't just about understanding now. It was about proving something. That even this anomaly could be dissected. That logic would eventually conquer the chaos. But as they layered one simulation over the next, death. Of comrades, betrayal, abandonment, imprisonment, Wade adapted. Bent, but did not break. His rage turned inward, calcified into focus, and rebuilt him. He didn't survive despite trauma. He survived because of it. In a secure military hospital near Fort Lewis, Marcus Wade's body was still recovering. They'd found him collapsed near the edge of a ravine, frost-bitten and half-starved. Medics said it was a miracle he wasn't dead. Marcus called it an inconvenience. His vitals returned to baseline within hours. He refused sedatives, asked for coffee. Instead, when the nurse suggested rest, he asked for a gym. "Your jaw still isn't fully stable," she told him, gently touching his cheek. "You've been through hell." Marcus just chuckled. "Then hell's not trying hard enough." He didn't know why he said it. But he meant it. Something had changed in the woods. The feeling of being watched hadn't vanished. It had deepened, become part of him. Like an itch under the skin, something that wasn't his, something curious. And then there were the dreams, not nightmares, those he could handle. These were colder, clinical, strange light, sensory pulses, like pressure waves without sound, memories that weren't his, places he'd never seen, stars that burned blue instead of white. One dream, he was standing on a metal bridge surrounded by beings that weren't human. They didn't speak, didn't move, just watched him, like he was the one under glass. When he screamed, the sound came out not in pain but laughter. He woke up grinning. "He's dreaming of us," Sir whispered. The room went still. Jacques Thul narrowed his eyes. "Impossible." "I've monitored his delta wave patterns. He's forming symbolic impressions from the memory probes. He's folding our attempts at extraction into his own subconscious narrative. He's not resisting," Jacques Thul realized. "He's learning us." That changed everything. They had seen resistance before, defiance, even madness. But never this. Wade wasn't just enduring their interference, he was assimilating it. His mind was using them. And if they continued, they might be feeding a fire they couldn't control. Jacques Thul turned slowly. "Prepare a direct interface." I will speak with him myself. Sir recoiled. Commander, the risk! Do it! Marcus sat upright on the infirmary bed, heart hammering. He was no longer dreaming. He was awake, but the room had gone wrong. The light had changed, subtler, somehow too perfect. The temperature was exactly neutral. There were no smells, no sound from the hallway. And when he looked out the window, the world was wrong. Too smooth, too still. Like a painting that hadn't finished rendering. He wasn't in the hospital anymore. You figured it out quicker than we predicted, said a voice behind him. Marcus turned. The figure that stood before him was not human, not remotely. 7 feet tall, layered in organic armor that pulsed like breathing coral. Eyes like obsidian glass, a mouth without lips. No visible weapons, but none were needed. Jacques Thul's voice was low. You do not fear us. That is irrational. No, that's human. Sir raised a device from his forearm, and the air shimmered again. The scenery around them bent. Suddenly, the Montana training range melted. Away, replaced by a manufactured reality. A battlefield. A wasteland of broken towers and charred earth. Simulated but real enough. The temperature dropped. The sky grew dark. The trap had been sprung. Marcus cracked his neck. Let me guess. This time you want to see what breaks me. We want to know what makes you, Jacques Thul corrected. He gestured and the simulation shifted. Figures began to form around Marcus, faces from his past. Dead squad mates, brothers in arms. Tommy, grinning with half his head blown away. Langston gut bleeding, reaching out in silent agony. They stood still, eyes vacant. Accusatory. You carry guilt, Sir said. You survive, while others fall. I do, Marcus admitted. Why keep fighting? Because I still hear their voices. And if we silence them, the world twisted again. Marcus now stood in the ruins of a home he didn't recognize, but felt deeply. A child's drawing on, a wall, blood smeared across a hallway, sobbing in the distance. Then silence. Marcus dropped to one knee, fist clenched. His jaw trembled, not from fear but restraint. You think I'm afraid of pain? He growled. I am pain. Jacques Thul stepped closer. You have limits. We have mapped every nerve, tracked every cell, modeled every potential breakdown. There must be a point where your defiance ends. Marcus stood slowly. There's your mistake. You're trying to find the end of me, but I don't stop. I don't end. The air pulsed. A violent tremor cracked through the illusion. The simulation stuttered. Jacques Thul turned to Sir. Stabilize the field. Sir activated a failsafe. The simulated world solidified, until Marcus spoke again. No. Another pulse of will. Not a weapon, not tech. Just raw, unfiltered refusal. The environment fractured like glass. The battlefield crumbled away, pixel by pixel, revealing not Montana, not any known terrain, but a blank white void. A clean slate. Then Marcus stepped forward and rewrote it. Not with code, not with machines, with memory. Suddenly they were in Kandahar, the real one, the heat blistering, the scent of smoke and oil, screams in the distance, gunfire, and Marcus, wounded, limping, dragging Langston across a cratered alley. I don't fight because I'm strong, he said. I fight because I have to. Because if I stop, they die. Because I was built in the fire, and every time you try to burn me down, you just make me harder to kill. Jacques Thul stared in disbelief. You control the field? I am the field now. He wasn't bluffing. The neural simulations weren't just recording him. They'd been absorbing him. He'd learned their structures, understood their mechanics through brute force repetition. His mind had adapted, co-opted their tech. He wasn't just enduring the interface anymore, he was hijacking it. Suddenly, Jacques Thul staggered. Pain. A pulse of it. Not from injury, but feedback. Human emotion, broadcasted back through the system. fear. "Commander, we're losing synchronization," Sir shouted. "His neural load is corrupting the core interface." Marcus stepped forward again and the battlefield reformed. Only now he was in control. Images of his enemies, his memories, his rage, alive and roaring. "You wanted to see what made me?" he growled. "Then look." Tommy appeared beside him. Langston, too. Ghosts, yes. But his ghosts. They didn't accuse. They stood with him. Jacques Thule dropped to one knee as the environment buckled. Sparks flew across his internal HUD. The simulation began to collapse under the weight of Marcus's mental override. "He's not resisting us anymore," Sir screamed. "He's consuming us." Then came the final break. With a thunderous sound, the entire construct collapsed, ejecting them all. Jacques Thule slammed back into the real world, gasping, clawing at the sensory cables. Sir was unconscious beside him, systems fried, overload, alarms blaring. And on the screen, Marcus Wade stood in the Montana snow, alone again, breathing heavily. A thin trickle of blood ran from one nostril. But he was smiling. He looked directly at the drone feed still monitoring him, then raised both hands and made a small gesture, 2 fingers, a mock salute. Not goodbye. Just try again. Jacques Thule stood silently in the command chamber. The lights were dimmed. Half the systems were offline for recalibration. Sir remained in a stasis tank. The other officers had retreated. None had words for what had happened. They had attempted to dissect a mind and instead been devoured by it. The anomaly wasn't just unbroken. It was triumphant. Jacques Thule stared at the Earth slowly turning below. The planet didn't look dangerous. But he knew now it didn't need to. Danger wasn't in its atmosphere or weapons. It was in the spite that lived in its people. He activated the interstellar beacon, encoded one simple message to the Dominion High Council. "Cease all infiltration, cease all experimentation. They are not ready to be conquered because they do not yield." And somewhere, in the snow-covered quiet of Montana, Marcus Wade packed, his bag wincing as his shoulder flared with sharp pain. He didn't bandage it, didn't rest. He just stood up, cracked his neck again, and smiled at the mountains. It was going to be a long winter. He couldn't wait.